From the heart of Silicon Valley, it's What's Up in the 90s. An entertaining look at people, places, and things, and how they affect you, your family, and your career as we move into the 90s. Now here's your host, Brian Stuckey.
Hello, welcome to What's Up in the 90s, and we've got a good show for you today. We got Mark Purdy, the San Jose Mercury News, who's the sports editor there. Some of you might have read his articles, both good and bad, and we'll get a taste of that a little later on. I'll explain that to you. And Bob Stepanich is the San Jose News Channel, Channel 11. He's the sports director there. And gentlemen, I'm tickled pink to have you guys here today.
That's good to be here.
So, Mark, I want to start with you. You're the editor over at the San Jose Mercury News, and primarily what we try to cover is the San Jose or the Santa Clara Valley News, as well as some outside things. But what's it like being a writer of a paper like San Jose Mercury News, who the Knight Ridder chain is one of the more established ones? What's it like every day having to write an article of interest?
Well, it's I think the best description of that was given by Red Smith, who was a great sports columnist for the New York Times. He said, it's really no problem. You just open up your vein once a day and let it bleed for a couple hours. That's really it. People are under the impression that because you write for a living, writing comes easy, and of course it doesn't. You know, it's a struggle, but I have a very good job. I don't mind when people say I have a good job. I mind when people say I have an easy job, because it's not easy. But I like my job, and I think it's a good one. I am the sports editor. But I should note, I don't really run the section. I do write columns. We have an executive sports editor who oversees it's about a 30-person staff in our sports section. And so his name is Dick Nagel, and he's the guy who really runs the department. They let me work there.
Okay. So he's kind of behind the scenes.
Yeah. Oh, no, well, yeah. But he really runs the thing. I mean, I'm a consultant. That means if he's stupid enough to ask for my opinion, I'm usually stupid enough to give it to him. But really, I write the columns, and he runs the department.
Well, I know with your articles, it seemed like when you first came here, and you've been here now for how long?
6.5 years.
6.5 years.
6.5 wonderful years.
Okay, and you came from Ohio?
I worked in Cincinnati, Ohio for 6 years before moving here.
Okay, but see, when you first came, it's like you're the new kid on the block. Who's this guy? Dan Ruby was someone who was a prominent sports writer as far as the Mercury News.
Still is.
Still is. But it seemed like you were doing a lot of articles at that time. And you're cutting back a little bit, are you not?
Well, it may have seemed I was doing a lot because I remember the first thing I covered here was the Los Angeles Olympics, and I wrote 24 straight days. I don't write 24 straight days anymore because we don't have the Olympics going on. I write 4 or 5, sometimes 6 columns a week, depending. What's happened is we've added a columnist, Bud Geraci, who used to cover the A's for us. So on a lot of days when there would be a news development and they'd call me and they'd say, we need a column about this, now it's Bud's day to write. We have an alternating schedule. And so I get to take more of my days off now.
Okay. Bob, one thing is I know you came here how long ago? About...
Been here 3 years now.
3 years now? San Jose News Channel, and you came from the Kansas City area?
Well, I spent 2 years in Reno, coming out of Missouri. And Mark's from Northwestern, I'm from Missouri. 2 pretty good J schools.
Yeah, right. 2 good schools and two bad football teams.
2 bad football teams. Real bad. Yeah, except, we can get 5 downs. But at any rate, I came from Missouri. Hometown is St. Louis, and went back to Missouri, the University of Missouri, to get my master's. Started out as a teacher, biology and chemistry, and a little bit of coaching. Just by a matter of fate, I was one of those idiots out in the backyard that announced imaginary baseball games, and you know, the classic case, and somehow fate eventually steered me in that direction. I think maybe we all gravitate to what we eventually want to do. Some of those dreams might get fulfilled along the way, and that's kind of what happened to me.
When you were teaching, you mentioned biology, and, so it wasn't.
Don't ask me to give any formulas.
I got D's in biology, so I never thought of becoming a biology teacher.
But with that, you know, it's a lot of people in journalism. Not so much journalism. I think as a writer, you got to have some real, you know, English skills perhaps and everything else. But in journalism, from the TV standpoint, it may be a little different. You didn't have a background really in journalism. You just had an ability to communicate.
Go ahead.
I think that's very important, because if I had come out of high school wanting to be some kind of sportscaster, I would have fallen right on my face. I was a little bit timid. No, I was a lot timid. And getting up in front of a classroom and having to entertain, and I hate to use that word, but entertain and keep students interested in learning is an achievement in itself. I didn't get out of teaching because I was burnt out or hated it. I just was steered in another direction. In fact, the principal asked me if I might help the newspaper and yearbook out with their particular publication, because I was a good photographer. So I went back interested in photojournalism and was about ready to get out of that because I got kind of, I don't know, bored, and some professor just grabbed me by my shirt collar and said, "Hey, try broadcast. We think you belong here." So it's funny how fate works. That's the lesson I'm trying to give you, Brian.
Well, I can't believe I'm standing up for a TV guy, but you know, I think you're wrong if you think that you don't need to write to be in TV. I mean, he's got to write, you got to write your telecast every night, and you got to write it short and tight. It's a different kind of writing than what I do, but his has to be. I mean, I don't think you made it sound like entertaining is kind of an evil word. I don't think it is at all. I mean, I think the one thing you got to do when you're writing a column certainly is at least keep the people interested or entertained until they get to the third or fourth graph, so they read all the way to the bottom. His writing's a different kind of writing than mine, but like I said, I can't believe I'm sticking up for you.
Okay, I can return that shot, because we always do this when we do these telecasts every year. I've got to return that, but I mean, it starts with the newspapers. You polish your skills there. Believe me, trust me, don't listen to this guy, Brian. Don't listen to this guy.
Well, what I do is harder.
I give you the headlines. I try and give you a shot. I can take you to the game and relive that game. His is harder because he's got to capture it just in words. I can take you there, and the way we put things together and the way we edit the pictures together and bring up the natural sounds of that event, that's pretty good. It takes a skill to do that. But as far as the hardcore writing, I'm going to give you the meat and potatoes. No, he's going to give you the meat and potatoes. I'm just going to dabble in the headlines. That's what we try to do.
Well, it's funny because I told you I was going to bring this up, and I am at this point. It's funny because he's got the ability, Mark does, of being able to say a number of things in an article, and it's something that people hold on to perhaps during the day. Sure. I know as a newspaper reader, I'll go through, and by the time, when it comes to the sports page, I'll be reading the badminton section. I want to know everything, you know, into junior highs and that type of thing. But going back, it was interesting. You know, you covered the high school event here locally, and you both, or
no, I didn't.
Okay, go ahead. Did you really? But it was
go ahead.
Well, but it was something where you had covered it as okay, you covered part of it or something. But Mark, not Mark specifically, but the Mercury News came out with something that questioned your coverage of a local high school event that was a big event, the CCS final. What is it like, you know, having your name in print like that?
Okay.
Was that tough on you at all?
Oh, please, please. You know, I said I started out timid. You know, along the way, through practice, you get a little bit, a lot thicker skin. And if the skin isn't thick, get out of there. If you can't take those shots, get out of there. In fact, if the truth be known, that is a newspaper's job, is to somehow be the watchdog of our medium. That's okay.
Well, why don't you tell the story? You didn't even tell the story. Tell the story.
The story. Okay, the story on the high school football game was a little bit confused. We weren't actually covering the event. We had a camera there.
Well,
but
what's the event? It's the CCS
It's the
finals?
CCS High School All-Star Football Game.
Okay.
The County High School All-Star Football Game. I was there doing PA. We usually telecast this game every year, and I could only stay for like 3.5 quarters. So about the 7-minute mark of the fourth quarter, I had to buzz out of there to do the 11 o'clock show. So it was a matter of taking a few shots. Hey, Bob, whoa, what's the deal? Can't you stay? Can't you, what? What's going on?
I guess we mentioned in our briefing section that
in the briefing section,
made a little jab at you, saying, you know,
Big deal.
we couldn't stick around for the whole game, too bad.
And that was one of 2 blurs. The other one came out some nights on Friday nights. I have high school students that come in and help me out with the high school football scores. And one night in the paper, we were missing a couple of good ball games. And we got some contacts, some people I know at Mark's place, and some nights I'd call him if I missed a couple of scores. So the next morning, call us anytime, Bob. Call anytime. You need any scores? We're here to help you. And so I don't mind that. Are you kidding me?
You got the scores on, right?
That's right. Good publicity, bad publicity, but publicity. That's the way I feel.
Regardless.
Nobody called you
Nobody
a child
called me. Hey,
beater.
no. They felt sorry for me.
Well, the thing is that what you look at sometimes that you wouldn't have an opportunity to question any other coverage by, let's say, the Mercury News or anybody else. You wouldn't mention that on your telecast. And
I don't know, would you?
Would you?
I you know,
It's kind of
another TV station in the South Bay, which will remain nameless when we run stories about San Jose State, has questioned our coverage.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I see Bob's telecast probably 3 out of 5 nights.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that Bob would refrain from, if he really disagreed with something one of us wrote, from mentioning it. He does commentary from time to time.
From time to time, but the problem here is, again, is that restraint of time.
Yeah.
I've got 3-4 minutes to give these people what's going on. And if I spend 30 seconds to say, hey, Mark.
Yeah.
However, I've been at one station in one particular town where we did kind of get into a running feud with the paper, and it's kind of fun sometimes, actually.
Sure. Well, it's good. It sounds like these are gentle jabs at each other. But, you know, I think we do tend to keep each other honest.
Yeah, oh, yeah. And I think it's healthy and entertaining.
Yeah, maybe entertaining.
Well, it's one thing is that we're going to talk about different segments of both your, jobs, and one is that you've got the this thing with the San Jose Sharks coming here. You do a special thing in the Sharks, and we're gonna actually have a roll of tape here in the second half of the show of an interview that you and I had about local events, and you also have your better
Mail Than Jail.
Better Mail Than Jail, and we're
great.
actually going to show an article on that as well. So that'll be interesting because you both are kind of on the fire. And one thing I noticed, and I don't know if I should say this on the air, but it's not difficult to get a direct line to you guys.
Isn't that amazing?
It is amazing.
It should be amazing. I mean, we should be accessible. I regret, because I work weekends, that I'm off during the week 2 days, and a lot of other times I'm out of town. I'm out of town 100 to 130 days a year, so people call and expect to get me, and I regret that sometimes I have to get back to them a couple weeks later. I always return every phone message I get, but it's just tough. But if I'm in the office on that day and the phone rings, I pick it up.
They do get a hold of you too, and you will see that in your column there. When we get back, we'll be talking to Bob and Mark. But before we do, I want to thank California Mortgage for sponsoring our show, as they always do. It's a great time to refinance, folks. So if you have any questions regarding that, give me a call at 559-0100. We'll be right back. Stepanich of the San Jose News Channel. Guys, we're going to talk a little bit about the local news coverage and that type of thing that each of you go through. Before we do, I do want to run a clip that I had the opportunity to talk to Bob Stepanich one time at a local tennis tournament, Almaden Valley Athletic Club. It was a women's 18 singles tournament. Bob happened to be there with the Mercury News. If we can, I'd like to roll that clip right now. San Jose News Channel. Some of you who watch the San Jose News Channel recognize Bob, that lovely face of his. And Bob, I was just, San Jose News Channel does a lot of local events, and I see you covering quite a bit of them. And what interest does CanTV have in an event like this here at Almaden Valley Athletic Club?
Well, before I even started on the Almaden Valley Athletic Club, about a year or two ago, I guess the station made the commitment that we'd be called the San Jose News Channel. And with that kind of commitment, I guess you're more or less, as we say, committed to go ahead with the local sports angle. So we're out here at the Athletic Club, being a local sporting event with the best players in the nation, not necessarily some local players in this tournament, because I don't think there is one San Jose or even a Valley County player in this tournament. Yet it's a local event. It's one of the better events, tennis events, for the people to come out and see some great talent, certainly the best 18-year-olds in the nation. But as I was saying before, it's a commitment of the station to cover the local sporting events. It's an investment. It's not just making us look good as far as covering the local sports heroes in this county. It's an investment because it's the only way that I feel that we can be different from the guys up the street. The city stations, we can't cover the Giants, the A's, the 49ers like they can. They have more resources. They're closer to them. And so, except for the 49ers, being close to training camp, we do cover them pretty heavily. But so how can we beat them? How can we get a little bit more of an angle on those city stations? The only way to compete with them is to show something they can't. And that is showing the local sporting events right here in Santa Clara County, which they can't do. So with the population growing and everything else growing in this valley, I think that's that's where the future is. And so we try to get that kind of signature, that kind of recognition that Channel 11, CAN-TV, will cover the local sporting events, whether it's high schools, the local colleges, whatever. We're there to at least dominate those, and then maybe sprinkle in some A's, Giants, 40.
Well, that was Bob Stepanich, as you can tell. A little more casual that day. How do you like those glasses, folks?
I still do.
But Bob, what is it? Okay, you've done an outstanding job in your coverage of the local sporting events in the area. Is it frustrating sometimes? Wouldn't you love to be able to go to Tampa Bay sometimes, or you know, how much ability do you have to cover some of the national things?
Well, I mean, that would take a show in itself to tell you exactly how a show is put together. We get tapes, national stories from the what we call the feed in New York. So we get national stories coming through them every day. We also have a cooperative set up through ESPN where we can take anything from them. They can send things our way. So I guess what you'd have to say, it's not quite as economically feasible for us to do things on a national basis. Mark said he traveled how many days?
130.
You know, forget it. I mean, we'll go to the big events just to get, again, that local signature on the team. If they go to the playoffs, the Giants, which we know they're going to do this year, it's an odd year. If the A's go to the series again, if the Niners go to the playoffs, we'll go because it's that big a deal. But as far as on a regular basis, forget it. And it's not just from an economic standpoint, it's from a matter of resources. There's just two of us.
Personnel. I mean, yeah, there's two of them. We have 32. They have two.
And
that pretty well tells you.
We are strapped, so it just doesn't make sense.
Okay.
So we try to fool you.
Okay. Mark, what's it like for you being able to take off and go to, let's say, the Super Bowl? And
well, I have a real good job. It's the newspaper has made a commitment that San Jose Mercury News will be the San Jose paper, but we recognize that our readers are interested in things outside San Jose as well as in San Jose. In surveys we've taken, the most interesting thing to me is that 70% of our readers, 70% of basically the people in Santa Clara Valley, grew up somewhere else. They moved here from somewhere else. Mm-hmm. They still retain interests in those places from somewhere else. And often when I get calls at work saying, well, how come you don't cover this? You know, I remember 30 years ago you used to cover the bowling leagues. And well, you know, the Valley's different than it was 30 years ago, for better or worse. And, you know, particularly like in college sports, you'll find, I found this fact amazing, and as a matter of fact, I didn't believe it when I first saw the survey that we did. It was a very scientific survey, and one that I believe in, because it's been pretty much borne out by what I've witnessed. In terms of college sports, there are more people here interested in reading about colleges outside the Bay Area than there are about any single college inside the Bay Area. In other words, maybe 30-some% of the readers, our readers, are interested in reading about San Jose State, 30-some% are interested in reading about Stanford, a little less in Cal, but more than 40% are interested in reading about the national college scene. Why? Because they've moved here from other places. And but that makes it difficult when you're sitting down there. I mean, it's tougher for him because he's got a 2-minute segment there to put in. But it's also tough for us. We've got a sports section with, it seems like a lot of space, but you're sitting there and there's so much sports going on every day. And when you sit there and you realize that, okay, we have all these people who are interested in San Jose State and Stanford and Cal, but now we've got all these people who moved here from other places that don't care a damn about San Jose State and Stanford. They want to know what's happening in the Big Ten. They want to know what's happening in the ACC and the Southeastern Conference. Why do you need to have all that stuff in about San Jose State? We aren't interested in them. We moved here from somewhere else. They stay home every Saturday and watch the 6 or 7 college games on TV, and they don't go to the San Jose State games. Now, we have a responsibility to cover San Jose State, which is why they're on the front page of the sports section after every football game they play. But during the week, you know, sometimes we can't give them the coverage that, you know, maybe they think they warrant, but our surveys show that most people are interested in reading about the broader picture. So that's what we try to provide them. But believe me, it isn't a case of us sitting there, what do we, you know, we're going to keep these things. Every day we're sitting there going, how can we get all this in? You know, there's just so much stuff you've got to try to get in.
I notice I don't see a lot of Ohio schools getting a lot of front page coverage.
No,
so
no.
that tells me a little something there.
Although I think they should. No, you know, so that's a long answer to your question, which was originally, how do I like traveling? I like traveling. I like to think, the readers make the judgment of this, I like to think that I bring a San Jose perspective to different events. I know when I went to Wimbledon, I wrote about Dan Goldie, America's Cup yacht races in Australia, which was probably about the best assignment I ever had. And there was a Bay Area boat there, and I wrote a little bit about them and kind of wrote about different things as I thought our readers would like to, you know, I tried to think from their perspective. You know, I'm living in San Jose. What do I want to read about the America's Cup?
But the bottom line is you're not going to please everybody at all. And
No. I don't know that you really want to. The press's role in our society is to be kind of a gadfly at some things. You want to inform people. You want to make people think twice about things maybe they hadn't thought once about before. You know, I feel fortunate if anybody takes 5 minutes to read what I have to say, let alone then sit down and write me a nasty letter.
Well, which they do, and that's one thing, is better mail than jail, is something I get a big kick out of reading personally. And you kind of are humble about it because you put more letters that are on the negative side and write, but at the same time you kind of jab people a little bit because they'll make a comment and then you'll go ahead and have your comment right after that. That's usually quite funny to a lot of us. And at the end you'll kind of lighten it up a little bit with some more of the positive letters that you get. What is that like, receiving some of those letters, and does that affect you at all? Or is that your job to get people
no, well, I want to make people think twice about things that they haven't thought once about before, as I said. I want to be entertaining. I seriously mean it. I don't think I'm being falsely humble here. I mean, all the things people can do in their day, to sit down and take 5 minutes to read what you have to say, and then write a letter, find a stamp and mail it, or even go to a fax machine, which I get hate fax now because we have a fax machine, is really almost a compliment to you. I get more negative letters than I do positive, I think, because people who get angry with what you read tend to respond more. But I get positive letters too. It bothers my wife. It used to bother my wife. It doesn't so much anymore. When she'd read, you know, letters that say, "You're a jerk, you're a gozzlehead, you're a creep," but as I explained to her, and as I suppose I'll have to explain to my kids as they get older, those people don't mean that. What they mean is, what you wrote makes me think you are a jerk. What you wrote makes me think you are a creep. It's different if, like I know Bob, if Bob told me I was a creep, it would bother me because, and he's probably in the next 5 minutes he's probably going to, but it would bother me because the guy knows me. I mean, he knows me. You know, the people who don't know me just know what I write. Well, it's okay to disagree with what I write, and it's okay for you to say if what I wrote makes you think I'm a creep, that's okay. You aren't saying I'm a creep. You're saying what you wrote makes me think you are a creep. If then I sit down say, I still think you're a jerk, well, then different ideas and people in sports, Bob knows this.
Bob would have a hard time coming out and expressing it if you started talking about the Raiders in a negative tone. That'd probably conjure up quite a...
Oh yeah, but like Mark, he hit it on the nose. I mean, sportscaster today, you cannot vanilla milkshake. You've got to give them tutti frutti. Yeah. I mean, you have got to pizzazz that, and whether you make it the way it is. And like I said,
people like to argue about sports.
That's right. I mean, it's
you go into a sports bar, not everybody there is sitting around going, gee, we all agree, you know, the 49ers are great, the Raiders are great, we're all having, you know, we all have it. No, instead they're arguing, the 49ers stink. Oh yeah, the Raiders stink, you know. People like arguing about sports, and the great thing about sports is it's not like politics and religion. You don't have to take it that seriously.
That's right.
You can have fun arguing about sports. That's what I try to do.
Guys, we got 2 minutes, and I want to cover just a couple things real briefly. Just real quick statement on this, San Jose Sharks.
Oh, it's the greatest. I can't wait. You know, people ask me, what's the favorite sport that you like to cover? Throw them all, lump them into a basket. I like things, new horizons coming up. I can't wait to really sink my teeth into hockey, and we've kind of done this with the Shark Bites that we do every week to get the people educated into this new sport coming in. And like you said, with all the people that have moved here, I think we got a good base of hockey fans here. I think it's going to be
interesting. 49er logo.
Well, I compared it to a poster in the photo drive-up window the other day. I called it the photo drive-up. It did surprise me he went back. They spent a lot of money putting that thing together, believe it or not, and it surprised me that they went back on it, but obviously it was the right choice.
Okay. Giants moved to Santa Clara.
Bring it on. Let's do it. I mean,
it's not a dead issue?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think so at all. I think Susan Hammer's adding a new approach, a new energy to the whole thing. San Francisco, I think it's obvious they've given up on the whole thing. Keep it in the South Bay. It's got a future.
Jose Canseco's next girlfriend.
Well, it'll to be revealed in my next column. Yeah, I wrote a pick a next date for Jose column, got response, and we're going to be
see
running that
coming up
soon.
then.
Yeah, soon.
Okay, last plug before we leave here. Let's talk about the 10K race. What's going on with that, Bob?
Just happens to be the Mercury News 10K race.
Okay,
Mark's
Mercury
people
News.
are
Okay.
sponsoring the whole event. It's a great race. We'll have about 10,000 runners again, right?
Yeah, it's a fun telecast to do. Bob and I do it every year, March 10th. Yeah.
Read the Mercury News, watch San Jose News Channel, Channel 11, and you'll get more information on that, plus a delightful coverage by these gentlemen, Mark Purdy and Bob Stepanich. I want to thank you guys for being here. Join us next week for What's Up in the 90s, another show. Good night.